Hello friends, and welcome back to Bigfoot Lake. It's been a little while. We took some time off, basically just because of life. We had some things come up and needed to tend to those, so we took a little bit of time away. But we have some really amazing stories to share with you, so that's where we're at. So tonight's two encounters with Bigfoot. They are very creepy nighttime encounters. So I hope you enjoy these two. They're certainly have a creep factor to them just from the dark environments that these are reported from. So with that being said, pull up a stump and get comfortable as we dive into our first of two nighttime Bigfoot encounters. My family has always been notorious for doing things at odd hours, and as you may well know, the strangest things always happen late at night. It was an unusually warm autumn some years ago, and at 16 years of age, I had just finished a summer job as an arts and crafts camp counselor. The only thing left to do was pick up a rather large trunk filled with my belongings. Unable to fit such a large trunk inside the VW Beetle I had purchased just a few weeks before, my mother was volunteered to transport it from the mountains back to the city in the larger of the family vehicles. Summer camp was a very wild place for me, with staff partying every night until the wee hours of the morning. My room was near the entrance of the staff residence where all these parties took place. By late July, sleep-deprived party wimps like myself were weeded out. So I built a single mattress-sized platform in the woods and then covered it with polyplastic. It was a 15-minute walk through dense forest to get there from the residence or the road. Bow Valley Provincial Park, an undisturbed, protected forest, was only a stone's throw away. It is there that my mother and a small dog named Willow and myself were going to retrieve my trunk at 3 o'clock on a Monday morning. Why 3 o'clock in the morning? I could say that it was the heat, but it was mostly because my father had not yet been told that the car would be leaving town. There was also my adolescent fear that knowledge of the platform construction would somehow reflect itself in a summer paycheck I had not yet received. My mother had to be at work by 6:30, so we had less than an hour to complete this covert action. As we approached the highway turnoff, a sliver of the moon cast a glowing border around southwestern Alberta's Mount Yamnuska. Driving several miles along the gravel road to the camp, it looked deserted. Summer staff had cleared out several weeks before, and a handful of permanent staff were either taking days off in the city or asleep in the cabin several miles from the summer campsite. Angling off on the side of the road, my mother left the headlights on, pointing into the trees. There was some discussion about taking the 20-pound dog named Willow for protection. However, Willow's track record for wandering off severely threatened a successful completion of the mission. Plus, very uncharacteristically, the dog named Willow refused to get out of the car and was now partially hidden under the driver's seat. Car headlights were of no value after the first few seconds of meandering through the forest. We had a flashlight, but I was having difficulty remembering the exact location of the camp. The 15-minute walk turned into a 30-minute skin-scraping bushwhack. But finally, we arrived at the isolated platform even though the flashlight batteries were now almost dead. I assured my mother that all we needed to be done was take down the polyplastic rain cover and carry back a mattress and the trunk. It should only take a couple trips. She was noticeably silent as we began working in the darkness. My mother began untying strings, securing the poly to the ground, and I was kneeling on the top of the 4-foot-high platform. Stretching up to reach some tangled binder twine knots tied to a tree, a pungent smell suddenly flooded the air. My eyes moved from the knots to the tall length of plastic. There, distorted through the semi-transparent poly, was a huge shadow, only about 7 feet away from me. With the 4-foot platform and me kneeling on top, the creature was easily at eye level. A split second later, there was an incredibly loud, screaming roar. Although I know of nothing to describe it, its sound was like a peacock scream, a bear growl, and a lion roar, all somehow combined. I can't tell you if I screamed. I can't tell you much of anything other than my eyes continued to peer through the plastic at this massive shadow. My 5'3" tall mother had somehow leaped into the air and was now on the platform beside me. Whatever it was finally turned and walked slowly away on its long hind feet. We continued watching as each heavy step could be heard contacting the ground. There were no visible ears, just a sparse mohawk, a mohawk-like fringe sprouting up from the tapering top of the creature's head. From behind, the upper body appeared massive. It continued to walk upright until disappearing into the trees. We stayed on top of the platform, motionless, for some time after. Then, finally, I started ripping down the plastic. I have no idea what my mother did during the next 40 or 50 seconds, but my next memory was power walking through the forest, balancing a single mattress on top of my head with one hand and carrying the handle of the trunk in the other. I assumed my mother was holding up the other end of the trunk. With Willow still hidden under the driver's seat, it was a very quiet drive home. Late at night, they say that your mind can play tricks on you, but I am so certain. Brown bears had been in the area that summer, but I have never seen a bear walk upright that smoothly or for that long a time. Or could it have been a very large, long-furred man standing over 7 feet in height? I say man because intuition tells me that the creature was a male. Could it have been a Sasquatch that night? I will never really know for sure, but you can bet that I will keep telling the story as if it were. So that concludes our first encounter, this creepy 3 o'clock in the morning encounter in the middle of a, sounds like pretty thick forest. So what do you guys think of that one? Let me know in the comments. While the creepiness continues, because this second story, it may even take that creepiness to another level. So this story comes from an area that is in Bridgewater, Massachusetts. Maybe you guys have heard of this area. It's known as the Hakamak Swamp. Just the name itself brings some creepiness to it. So with that said, let's dive into our second story. Oh boy, do I have a story about Hakamak Swamp for you. I have hunted in the Hakamak Swamp area in the daytime. You could get a good deer back in the day, but never have I gone at night. And still to this day, even driving through it at night, I get the heebie-jeebies. And even though most of this area is now built up, I still get freaked out a bit. This is my story from when I was 15, the summer of 1990. A group of friends and I, there were 7 of us, went to explore an Indian bridge, which the rumor was that you will see a ghostly, zombie-like hand that will reach up through the rock bridge, and Devil's Island, which also had a rumor that when the swamp filled, there was directly in the middle of the swamp a small island would appear, but with a large but dead-looking tree on it. The rumor was that a demon lived there on the island in the Hakamak Swamp. We just wanted to see if it was true and if we could see anything or anyone out there. You know, curious kid stuff. And to see if the stories we've heard around town were true in any way. So we go out there on a Saturday night after midnight. But when we get there, the path to the Indian bridge was washed out due to the rain that we had that morning. So we go down the path that goes around Devil's Island. We got halfway down the path, about 1 mile out, and it got muckier and muckier. We turned around to head back. As we were walking back, we could hear footsteps to the left of us, which was the other path that was from the Indian Bridge path. The 2 paths were separated by a small stream. Every time we moved, so did it. You could hear the wet ground squish under its feet, and it had heavy sounding footsteps, not like ours. A friend and I had noticed that you could see through the trees to the other path, so we all stopped to look to see if there was another way to the other path. As we stared at the other path, something very, very big and tall moved, like it was going to move towards us. The moon was out, and it illuminated it just enough to see. Then we all noticed this smell. This horrible, rotten, trashy, dead meat, musky smell. I'll never forget that smell. And I've never smelled anything that could compare to that unforgettable night. So we booked it towards the end of the path where our truck was, and noticed that the footsteps were no longer following us. When we caught our breaths, we started to listen. It was dead quiet. Not a sound from the woods. No sounds of the water that trickled from the stream. No crickets or summer bugs buzzing at all. Dead quiet. Then that god-awful smell came back again. When we looked back at the path, we noticed over to the right that the huge tree on Devil's Island had a huge shadow standing next to it. And then the scream it made. Nothing like I've ever heard. Not until I was 20 and watching a documentary about Bigfoot and the Bridgewater Triangle. What the fudge? You can share this story and say it's from me. And this story was sent to us a while back from one of our really good friends. And her channel name is Crazy Irish. So I want to thank Crazy Irish for sending us that story. And I'm going to include the link to her channel in the description of this video. So if you're not subscribed to Crazy Irish, please do so. We would consider it a favor. And tell her that Bigfoot Lake sent you. So what do you think about this second encounter that ratcheted up the creep factor to another level? So many stories come from that Hakamak Swamp area. It's got a lot of lore and a lot of legend attached to it. There are tales of satanic cults associated with this swamp. So many stories associated with this whole entire area of the Bridgewater Triangle. So let me know. Let me know what you think in the comments of this story and our first story. And also, I wanted to reach out because this channel it can only survive on the stories that we receive. So we would appreciate it, and if you have any encounters that you would like to share at all, don't even have to be Bigfoot encounters. We talk about a lot of things here at Bigfoot Lake. Anything mysterious or out of the ordinary, strange lights in the sky, strange things you have heard, maybe those god-awful smells. Let us know. Like I said, this channel cannot be without all of your input. So if you have a story to share, reach out to us. You see the email up on the screen. Yeah, just send us an email, and yeah, we would love to hear from you, and we appreciate all of you. Thanks again for listening to tonight's stories. I hope you enjoyed them both. And with that being said, hope you all have a great night, and we will see you on the next.